Now on the telephone, State Representative Brian Brown with a little update. Brian Brown got involved in the city council here in Greenville last night, the discussion about raising city taxes, and I take it that Representative Brown is on his way to Raleigh because I think the House goes into session at about 8:30 this morning, so I'm glad we were able to catch you before that. Good morning, Representative Brian Brown. How are you?
Good morning, Henry. How are you?
I'm doing good. Are you getting ready to walk into session?
We go in at 8:30 for the final vote on the House budget. So
Yeah.
yesterday was a long day.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that if you got a minute. But let me ask you about topic A first. Greenville City Council went ahead and voted last night to pass their budget, including a 2-cent property tax increase. And there were a lot of people that spoke out against that. There were a lot of reasons not to do it. There were a lot of reasons they said to do it. But, you know, one of the reasons not to do it last night was the fact that I understand you and I hadn't talked about this yet, but I heard Tom Lamprecht yesterday afternoon talking about the fact that, and then I heard the city attorney during the meeting last night say that you actually weighed in yesterday with the Greenville city attorney and said that you think that the vote that they took last night could have been an illegal vote because the second cent that they voted to increase taxes on Monday night, there was no public hearing held after that vote was taken.
That's right. And, you know, I guess I should probably start this off, and obviously need your help in this. And I hope the listeners understand as well that as this begins to spin, I want listeners to understand that I'm not interjecting to try to provide Raleigh control, which will be that spun message. It's more of the fact that, you know, the city of Greenville is a creature of the legislature, and our job is to provide that oversight when we feel like things are going awry, if you will. So that is why I interjected yesterday. There is some concern that statute was not appropriately followed in the procedures according to the timeline in which the two various taxes were passed, the budget public hearing was conducted, and the vote on the budget took place. At this point, and at the same time, you know, the House is dealing with their budget. So we were trying to use staff as little as possible as we tried to navigate this yesterday, knowing what we were dealing with on the House floor yesterday. But it is of their opinion that there are some questions surrounding the timeline and how it pertains to the general statutes and what they should have done procedurally. At this point, what we are looking to potentially do is to simply raise our concerns to the Treasurer's office and let her make a final determination of whether the procedures were followed according to statute regarding the additional tax that was passed by the council on Monday evening and the public hearing that was held on Monday evening and the actual vote that was taking place last night. Regardless of where the decision comes down, we do have to kind of look at it and say, was it handled appropriately for the citizens of Greenville? And if we have any type of ability to weigh in on that, we certainly need to do so.
And of course, if you do, unfortunately, it'll be a lot of effort and time put into something that's just going to result in the same thing when it's all over with, because you saw where it went last night. I mean, these four people are going to vote for a tax increase anyway, and if they have to hold another public hearing, they'll do that and then vote to have the taxes. But I think it showed a disrespect at best. I mean, the question of whether it's legal or not is something you've raised, and the city attorney last night spoke to that and said in his legal opinion that they did not break the statute. I don't really understand how they could say, it just seems to me if the statute says if you're going to raise taxes, you've got to have a advertised public hearing. I don't know how that could not have not broken the law, because the public hearing was held on Monday night, and then the vote for a second additional penny, another $588,000 in coming out of taxpayers' pockets in Greenville was voted on after the public hearing. So it seems to me that I guess, you could argue it both ways, saying, well, but we had a public hearing on the budget, and that's all we're required to do. But on an ethical level, if you're going to allow, and they did do the right thing last night and opened up the public comment period, but again, it had not been legally advertised as a public hearing. So the question that I have is, not a legal one as much as it is an ethical one. The way that this Greenville City Council conducted itself was against its own policies and was disrespectful to the taxpayers of this city, in my opinion.
Well, I think, again, to the point, we'll figure out whether the procedure was handled appropriately. But to your point, I think that we definitely need to provide the citizens with more of an ability to voice their concerns and their opinions on those things. We know where the voting block is, and we know what's going to take place. What's concerning me more on the side is the fact that this city council made statewide news essentially here in the legislature as they remove the cap on the privilege license. We're floating a bond referendum. We passed 2 separate tax increases, one of which where a council member was not present. I certainly have a great deal of concern, and the citizens of Greenville should have a great deal of concern. The mayor said it the other day when he was on your show, elections have consequences. We're certainly feeling those consequences within the city of Greenville, but citizens need to be as active as possible moving forward with this council and hold their feet to the fire. And you have my word, the citizens of Greenville have my word that I will do everything from my power statutorily to ensure that things are followed with the proper protocol moving forward.
And we appreciate that. Let me ask you this question: the other thing that is the connection between the legislature is this continued the continued comments which we heard over and over and over again last night from 3 of the 4 people who, my city council person didn't speak last night. He had no opinion on anything. I guess he didn't say a word. But Rick Croskery didn't say anything. Rick Smiley, Calvin Mercer, and Marion Blackburn all 3 said repeatedly last night the reason they had to put that other 1 cent sales tax, 1 cent property tax in last night was because of the action that you and the legislature took to curtail their ability to raise business license fees. And again, this is something that's been on the drawing board and discussed, and a lot of concern about this for a long time at the state legislature. But what's your opinion of that? I mean, you're getting the blame. The legislature's getting the blame for Greenville having to raise taxes.
Well, we're always going to get the blame. We're going to get the blame because we're making the tough decisions of doing good things for our business community in this state, like doing away with a privilege license that's being very abused across this state. I think the realistic thing to look at is we really don't truly know the actual financial impact that it's going to have on Greenville. There's projections, but there's a lot of other things that we've done from a tax standpoint in last year's comprehensive tax reform package that have yet to be realized from a financial impact standpoint as it pertains to city revenues, as it pertains to statewide revenues. So we don't have that full effect. So I think to rush to judgment so quickly to say that we have to pass this tax increase because of a privilege license tax, I think it's just, it doesn't tell the entire story. And, I look at it and say, regardless of whether we did this or not, would we still be having this conversation? And I think that's something that the citizens really need to talk about as they kind of look at the actions of the city council. We're more than happy to take the blame, and I'm very proud that we removed the privilege tax license because I think it was an onerous tax on our business community that really stretched far and wide. We had corporations in the city limits of Greenville paying Mecklenburg, Charlotte privilege license taxes. You tell me in what world that's correct, just for the privilege of doing business in Charlotte. Those are taxes that affect the citizens of Greenville, and we needed to look at it from a different perspective. And I'm very happy that we did, and the business owners in our community should be very happy that we did that also.
Well, it's just it's a philosophical difference from what we've seen with the city council in recent years, which has been to encourage business, to try to create additional business and additional investment in the city by the private sector to increase the tax base so we don't have to put the burden of additional property taxes on people who own property, who are maybe elderly, need medication, the poor who may have a hard time paying additional taxes on top of the additional utility increases and things like that. And so, it's a difference in philosophy. I think it's a sad difference. And this 4-2 voting block that we see now here in Greenville is pretty obvious where they're going. It's a raise taxes, spend money on things that are questionable. I mean, there were things that were brought up last night in this budget that they can't even tell you what they've been earmarked for.
Right.
And so I don't know. I'm just very concerned about it, and I appreciate you weighing in. Now, let me ask you this question to confirm. Are you saying that you will take this to the state treasurer's office at this point for an opinion?
At this point, I will circle back with our municipal lead here and our legislative staff. We will review kind of the timeline one more time this morning, and we will go from there. And, the opinion last night was that she felt as though there was enough questionable actions taken that it should probably be raised to the treasurer's office for a final opinion. Now, when you're looking at the interpretation of the general statute, you're talking about from our side, legislative staff interpreting the general statutes, from the City of Greenville side, the School of Government interpreting the general statutes as it pertains to the actions that have been taken. But the reality is the only opinion that truly matters in the interpretation of the general statutes regarding the procedures that have been taken is the treasurer's office, who will actually, give a final determination of whether it was done correctly or not. So that's kind of where we are. Again, for me, I want to make sure that before we do something like escalate it to the treasurer's office with a concern, that those concerns are 100% validated by our legislative staff here.
I know you got to go, but while I got you, have you got another 2 minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
I know you got. I don't know how close you are to the chambers. I know you got to go in.
I'm sitting in my office, so I'm close enough.
All right. Well, you're going to have to run to the other building.
I'll run. That's all right.
All right. Very very quickly. The House will vote on its and pass its budget, I guess, for the third reading today, and then there'll be a conference committee set up. All indications are that the Senate and the House, Representative Brown, are about 180 degrees away. And, the next move now will be for a conference committee to see if you can bridge those gaps and come up with a budget by the end of the month of June. Two questions for you. Number one, how optimistic are you that there'll be a deal made in the next couple of weeks on the budget between the House and the Senate and the governor's office as well? Number one. And number two, how do you feel about funding it? We're all so concerned about funding for the ECU School of Medicine, and I know how hard you've been working on those issues. How optimistic are you about that? So why don't we start with that one first? How optimistic are you about the School of Medicine?
We're moving in the right direction, Henry. We've done a lot of work, and to the credit of folks that are involved in leadership with East Carolina as well as Vidant, they've spent a lot of time here in the legislature trying to educate members who may not completely understand the significance and the financial impact that it has on the region and things. So they've done a great job with that, and I commend them for it. There's still some work to be done. The big items like SOTCA is in the House budget, and it will remain in the House budget and be passed back over to the Senate for during conference. We fixed UPL as best as we can fix it at this point regarding some of the funding mechanisms for Vidant and ECU. There's still some discrepancies in the numbers, which will throw it into conflict and allow us to continue to have the conversation throughout the conference committee process. And, I'm extraordinarily optimistic on some levels, and I think that, on other levels, some of it, what is in the House budget now, will likely stand, which is definitely concerning.
You mean in the Senate budget?
No, when I think some of the assessment numbers for the Medicaid assessments for the physicians, UPL, as well as the reimbursement status for the hospital, my concern is that may end up staying, which is in the House budget.
Yeah.
Currently, again, we're working through that process.
And for people who don't understand that there were some things that came over from the Senate you were trying to get out, and you've worked, I know, with your colleagues in the House. But what I hear you saying is you couldn't get them all out.
We couldn't get them all out. We did get things adjusted. We got some of the assessments decreased. We've done a lot of work on it to get it to a place where it's going to have to continue to be discussed. But it's still not perfect. It's still not exactly what I want, and certainly not what the folks at Vidant or ECU would like to see as a final product. But the good news is that it's still a work in progress. We still have good leadership here in the House that's willing to continue working on it, and I think that we'll continue to move it. I think some of the items are just very difficult lifts for a short session and a budget that is taking slight tweaks, and it's very difficult to move some of the money within the HHS budget to try to change some of the funding mechanisms that are being proposed.
And
But we will continue working.
do you optimistic that there's going to be a deal with the House and the Senate in the next? I guess the projected date to get out of the short session is June 30th, right?
It is. The Senate actually passed a resolution earlier this week to adjourn sine die on the 27th of this month. So, we could be out as early as the 27th. As of right now, the timeline that we're looking at is the end of next week to have the budget agreed upon or not agreed upon.
Right.
I would say that there's a lot of good things in the budget that both sides agree on. Probably the big points that we're concerned about on both sides is certainly education and Medicaid funding, particularly. So those will be the two areas where most of the time will be spent, and where we will have to come to some type of agreement on. The rest of the budget, I think, we will align pretty well with and come together on.
All right, you better go. You're going to be late for the House session. Thank you, Representative Brown. It's always great to talk to you. You're always accessible, and we appreciate your involvement and looking out for the citizens of Greenville as well. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much.